Before sunrise on April 18, 1906, San Francisco felt invincible. The city had survived the lawless days of the gold rush. It had survived fires before. It had survived economic crashes and political scandals. It stood on steep hills above a glittering bay, proud and loud and certain of its future. On that spring morning, bakers were already kneading dough in basement kitchens. Dock workers were preparing to unload ships. Newspaper presses waited for dawn editions. Streetcars rested quietly along Market Street. Then, at 5:12 a.m., the earth moved. Not gently, not politely. It snapped with a force so sudden and violent that thousands of people woke mid-air, thrown from their beds before they even understood they were awake. Windows shattered inward, brick facades peeled off buildings and crashed into the streets. Chimneys toppled like stacks of children's blocks. The sound was beyond description, part thunder, part explosion, part grinding roar from beneath the world itself. The rupture along the San Andreas Fault stretched for nearly 300 miles. In some places, the ground shifted more than 20 feet sideways. Fences were torn apart, roads split open, railroad tracks twisted into shapes that looked like melted wire. Inside homes across the city, darkness mixed with chaos. Gas lamps crashed to the floor. Furniture slid violently across wooden planks. People tried to stand but could not. The ground rolled like the deck of a ship in a storm. The shaking lasted less than a minute, but for those inside it, it felt like time had broken. When the movement finally slowed, there was a brief, terrible silence. Then came the screaming. San Francisco in 1906 was a city of nearly 400,000 people. Elegant Victorian houses climbed Nob Hill. The Palace Hotel stood as a monument to wealth. Chinatown pulsed with life and commerce. The ferry building clock tower marked time at the edge of the bay. Within minutes of the quake, the city began to burn. Gas lines had ruptured under the streets. Water mains, heavy cast-iron pipes buried beneath brick roads, had cracked and burst. Stoves overturned in kitchens. Electrical wires sparked in collapsed walls. Small flames appeared in dozens of places at once. Normally, firefighters would have contained them quickly, but when crews connected hoses to hydrants, little or no water came out. The earthquake had broken the city's lifelines. As the sun rose, smoke curled into the pale sky. People stumbled into the streets in nightclothes, clutching blankets, photographs, jewelry boxes, whatever they had grabbed in the seconds before fleeing. Some stood barefoot on broken glass, staring at buildings that leaned at impossible angles. Others dug through debris with bare hands, calling out names. By mid-morning, isolated fires had merged into walls of flame. Wind pushed the inferno westward. Entire blocks ignited. Wooden Victorian homes, beautiful but tightly packed, became fuel. Firefighters resorted to dynamiting buildings to create fire breaks, hoping explosions would stop the flames' advance. Sometimes it worked. Often it made matters worse. The financial district burned first. Banks, law offices, insurance headquarters, symbols of prosperity, collapsed into smoke. The Palace Hotel, pride of the city, burned for hours before finally giving way. Flames climbed Telegraph Hill. Chinatown, already crowded and politically marginalized, was devastated almost entirely. From across the bay in Oakland, people watched in stunned silence as a column of smoke darkened the horizon. For 3 days and nights, the city burned. Refugees poured toward open spaces. Golden Gate Park, the Presidio, the waterfront. Makeshift camps appeared overnight. Families built shelters from doors torn off hinges. Soldiers from nearby Fort Mason patrolled the streets under orders from Mayor Eugene Schmitz to prevent looting. There were reports of shootings, of harsh enforcement, of confusion and fear layered atop destruction. More than 250,000 people, over half the population, were suddenly homeless. Official death counts at the time reported around 700 fatalities, but historians now believe the real number was far higher, likely over 3,000. Many bodies were never recovered. In Chinatown especially, deaths were underreported or ignored in official tallies. The physical destruction covered more than 500 city blocks. Yet, amid the smoke and ruin, something remarkable began to emerge. People helped each other. In Golden Gate Park, strangers shared blankets. Bakers whose shops had survived set up makeshift ovens and handed out bread for free. Nurses treated the injured beneath trees. Children searched for lost pets among tents and ash. One story that survived tells of Amadeo Pietro Giannini, founder of the Bank of Italy. While larger banks hesitated, unsure how to protect their assets, Giannini loaded cash and records onto a wagon, hiding it beneath crates of produce, and moved operations to the waterfront. There, using a plank across 2 barrels as a desk, he began offering loans to small business owners based on trust alone. No collateral, no paperwork, just belief that the city would rebuild. Those handshake loans helped restart commerce when formal systems had collapsed. The American Red Cross arrived quickly, coordinating food distribution and shelter construction. The U.S. Army built rows of small wooden cottages to house displaced families. For months, tent cities became neighborhoods. Children attended makeshift schools beneath canvas roofs. Meanwhile, scientists studied what had happened. Geologist Harry Fielding Reid carefully measured how fences, roads, and landscapes had shifted. From his observations, he developed what became known as the elastic rebound theory, the idea that stress builds slowly along faults until it releases suddenly in a quake. His work laid the foundation for modern seismology. But for survivors, the science mattered less than survival. One woman later described standing on Nob Hill, watching flames approach her home. She realized the fire would reach it within minutes. Rather than wait helplessly, she reportedly set her own curtains alight, choosing the moment of loss rather than surrendering it to the advancing wall of fire. Another account tells of firefighters pumping seawater directly from the bay when hydrants failed, their faces blackened with soot, uniforms stiff with salt. The destruction reshaped not only streets, but laws. Insurance companies faced enormous claims. Some attempted to avoid payment by arguing that fire, not earthquake, caused the damage. Court battles followed, influencing future insurance practices nationwide. Architects began designing buildings differently. Steel frames proved more resilient than unreinforced brick. New safety standards slowly took shape, and the city rebuilt. Despite suggestions from some leaders to relocate entirely, San Franciscans refused to abandon their hills. Construction began almost immediately. Within a few years, new buildings rose from charred foundations. Streets were widened, infrastructure improved. In 1915, less than a decade after the disaster, San Francisco hosted the Panama Pacific International Exposition, a World's Fair celebrating both the completion of the Panama Canal and the city's recovery. Millions attended. Grand exhibition halls stood where rubble had once smoldered. The message was clear. The city had not died. It had transformed. More than a century later, San Francisco thrives again, a center of finance, technology, and culture. Glass towers reflect sunlight where Victorian houses once burned. Tourists photograph the Golden Gate Bridge, often unaware that beneath the pavement lies one of the most studied fault lines in the world. The San Andreas Fault has not disappeared. Scientists say another major earthquake is inevitable. They cannot predict the day or hour, but they know stress continues to build. Modern buildings are designed to sway rather than collapse. Early warning systems can send alerts seconds before strong shaking arrives. Emergency plans are rehearsed. Lessons learned in 1906 guide preparation today. But the memory of that April morning remains a quiet warning. In less than 60 seconds, a confident city was brought to its knees. And yet, what followed was not surrender, it was rebuilding. The 1906 earthquake did not only expose the power of nature, it revealed the strength of community, the stubborn refusal to give up on a place called home. On calm mornings now, when fog drifts softly through the Golden Gate and sunlight spills across Market Street, it is hard to imagine fire consuming everything in sight. But history remembers. Beneath the beauty of the bay, beneath the hum of traffic and the rhythm of modern life, the fault still runs, silent, patient, powerful. And the story of 1906 endures not as a tale of destruction,